Hello, welcome to this overview video for Folio Bass's designer page. As we said in the general introduction, Folio Bass is a dual voice rompler for bass sounds, and there are 300 different source material instruments that we've sampled to make up Folio Bass. Here we are in the designer page, and as we said already, there are 3 rows of sounds, 3 rows of controls, sorry, each divided into 2 columns, generally speaking, 1 for each voice. First thing you're probably going to want to do is choose a, once you can hear a sound, but the first thing you're probably going to want to do is choose some source material. So click on one of these names, and you'll see this dialog appearing. There are 15 categories of sounds in Folio Bass, and each category has got a whole set of different sounds included. So if I close this for a second and turn off the volume for voice number 2, we'll just listen to pure triangle. We can go to analog and choose acoustic. And that voice will load, so you can audition sounds as you go. And once you have a sound you're happy with, just close the dialog. And you can do exactly the same for the next voice along. Let's choose acoustic. And obviously you can set the balance of these voices with these volume controls. You can set the pitch of the note itself and some fine component, so you can use the same sound, pure sine in this case, in both voices and change the fine amount to get a slightly detuned version of itself. So that's volume, pitch, and some fine control. There's some pan controls, obviously. You pan each voice left and right. Let's just choose something so it's a little more obvious that that's what we're doing. Each voice has a volume envelope, which you can engage or not. Set the amount of the envelope. Let's turn this off and turn on the volume of the voice envelope. Maybe choose Pisica as another example. Beyond that, there's 2 tabs, one for tremolo and one for vibrato. So you can turn tremolo on for the voice. Let's set the speed. And you can choose the shape to use. And you can do the same for vibrato. And Below that is a set of filter controls. And it's a multi-mode filter, so the sort of ladder style, Moog style filters here, low pass, band pass and high pass. When you select one, it will automatically turn it on. So again, turn that off. And you can set the resonance. So you kind of start to get that self-oscillating effect out of those. You can add an LFO to the filter, which will affect the frequency. So let's turn this in. And again, set the shape and the phase of that. Or you can put a filter envelope in. Again, very much like the volume envelope, except this time affecting the frequency of the filter. So classic style effects. There are send effects, 4 of those for each voice, which are pretty obvious. If we got the send page and I turn everybody off for a second and just leave the reverb on and set the send level and go back to the designer. Pretty obvious. Next along is the slide control. Not quite glide is what you may call this. The slide control will slide to a note by a fixed amount and will slide up to the note or slide down to the note dependent on the speed you set. So here we have a speed and it's below the midpoint, so it will slide up. And above the midpoint will slide down. If you set the speed or the amount on 0, then we just get back to normal. Next, the dynamics, which are kind of fairly obvious. Your input velocity gets remapped to some output velocity, so it's really to manage the dynamics of the sound or your keyboard playing style. You can set a key range, obviously, in which the voice is going to respond. If it gets a key outside that range, it won't respond to it. And you can transpose the sound. Up or down. Folio Bass has a sub in the middle, so you can set the amount of the sub that is applied, and that will just play an octave, the 2 voices, but an octave lower, basically play a MIDI note 12 semitones lower. And you can set the amount of variation that comes in the round robin model. We don't use round robins, we use a sophisticated modeling technique to do this with. So you can set the amount of variation that the round robin model will implement. It's entirely up to you what you do. You may see next to, have seen next to each of a number of the different controls this little circle. Here they are, these little dots. These mean that each of these voices has an independent modulator that's assignable to them. So if I turn it on by clicking on it, it will turn on, and you'll see that we are looking at the modulator for voice 1 volume. It's a set of values in a table that the modulator will move through at a tempo defined by yourself. For a number of steps, you can have any number of steps up to 128 steps and all the way down to 4 steps. You can suggest that, and as you can see, it's just moving between those. Put this on 0, you will see it smoothly move from the lower value to the upper value and keep repeating around that process. If you wanted to just go through this process once, click on one shot and it will go through the process and stop. If you want to add some randomness into each of the values, you can do that, and as you can see, you get a kind of random amount of things happening. If you want it to restart each time you send a new MIDI note, click on Retrigger. And you would get that. You can load a bunch of presets in here, and you can save the current set of values by clicking on Save Preset. The other thing you may have noticed in here is this note, velocity and key. So if I use velocity, so now this becomes a velocity based modulator. So the velocity of the incoming note will define what value is set for this particular parameter. So if I set these the exact opposite way, like this, the quieter ones will end up here. The harder I hit, the quieter it becomes. True also for key and for the note itself will be essentially note says move through this table at the rate of once for each note. So let's put this down really low, and we will see. We re-trigger. I think. Oh, one shot off. So they're the kind of different kinds of modulation effects that you can have on each voice. Finally, there are these randomization controls. You can randomize the voices and the voice controls. You can randomize the filters and the envelopes, and you can randomize the modulators. So I have no idea what will come out when I press this. Sometimes they're great sounds, sometimes they're just good sounds, but I'm almost always usable. So let's click voices. And you can see lots of things changed. The great thing about the sample sources, the source material for Folio Bass, is that it's so good that you just click this voice randomization to get entirely new and very, very often really usable stuff. I think that's everything in the designer page. I hope you have a lot of fun with it. Take care. Bye-bye.